Have you ever noticed the moment the room changes when you stop being easy to bend? The smile that once seemed warm turns colder. The voice that used to sound supportive now hides a sharp edge. Silence grows where encouragement once lived. It stings, doesn't it? Almost as if the very act of standing firm has marked you as a threat. Here is a truth I had to learn the hard way. When people cannot steer you, they will not simply step aside. They will try to press, to twist, to make you doubt yourself. Sometimes with guilt, sometimes with flattery, sometimes with whispers behind your back. It is rarely about right or wrong. It is about the discomfort they feel when their grip slips. The Stoics knew this tension well. True strength, they taught, is not in forcing others to bend, it is in refusing to be bent. But ask yourself, are you truly free or still reacting without seeing the strings? Stay with me, because the last move they use, the one no one sees coming, may be the very test that proves your freedom. As we step into the first chapter, picture this. The moment you stop bending so easily, the air around you changes. Smiles cool, voices sharpen, support fades into silence. And in that silence, a new tactic begins to creep in. Not force, not open confrontation, but something quieter, more insidious, manipulation. It comes like smoke, hard to catch, easy to breathe in before you even realize you're choking on it. Now imagine someone who once praised you suddenly sighing when you say no, tilting their head with disappointment as if you betrayed them. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me. The words land heavy, not because they hold truth, but because they strike at your heart, at your sense of loyalty. Another time, the same lips might flatter you. You're so good at this. I don't know what I'd do without you. A sugar-coated chain. You feel the pull, the pressure, the subtle twist that makes you second-guess yourself. And here's where the danger lives, not in their request, but in your reaction to it. The Stoics saw this pattern centuries ago. Epictetus warned us, "No man is free who is not master of himself." He understood what most people miss. Manipulation is never about the request itself. It's about control. It thrives not on logic, but on reaction. They don't want you to think. They want you to feel guilt, to feel fear, to feel the weight of doubt. And once you are reacting, you are no longer deciding, you are obeying. Think of it like a chessboard. Every guilt trip, every flattery, every feigned urgency is a move designed to corner you, to box you into check, not with force, but with your own conscience. The inexperienced player responds to every move, scrambling to cover each square. The wise player sees the game for what it is and refuses to enter the trap at all. The strongest move is not to fight every piece, but to step back and recognize the pattern. I once knew someone skilled at this silent art. They could twist almost any situation to their favor. One day, they asked me for something I wasn't comfortable giving. When I politely declined, they let out a long sigh and whispered, "Wow, I thought we were closer than that." The guilt hit me instantly. My mind rushed to justify, to explain, to prove I wasn't ungrateful. But then, something inside me stilled. I looked them in the eye, smiled gently and said, "I know what you're doing." The effect was immediate. Their face faltered. The performance cracked. They stammered, laughed awkwardly, tried to brush it off. But the power they held over me had vanished in a single sentence. And here's the truth. That was the last time they ever tried to manipulate me. This is the discipline Stoicism teaches, not coldness, but clarity. To pause when guilt tugs at your chest. To breathe when flattery seeks to trap you. To ask yourself, Is this a request, or is this manipulation? That one question alone can dismantle an entire web of control. Because when you stop reacting, when you stand calmly in your own decision, their strings no longer reach you. Practical wisdom demands simple tools. First, recognize the feeling. If someone's words make you feel cornered, pressured, or responsible for their emotions, step back. Second, hold firm without over-explaining. The less you justify, the less leverage they have. Third, refuse to play. You don't owe them arguments or defenses. A simple no is complete. Remember, manipulation only thrives in engagement. It feeds on your justifications, your emotional energy, your need to explain. The moment you withdraw that fuel, it starves. You master yourself, and in doing so, you master the encounter. There's a freedom in this that no one can take from you. The freedom of calm clarity in the face of invisible chains. The freedom of looking at someone who wants you to fold and quietly knowing, not this time, not ever again. So when the world leans in with its sighs and its flattery, when it tries to paint you into corners of obligation, stand still, stand firm, because the only power manipulation holds is the power you hand over. And once you learn to stop handing it over, the game is finished before it even begins. From here, we move into the shadows of another tactic, one colder, one sharper. If manipulation doesn't bend you, they'll try to break you another way, and that's where the lies begin. Moving into the second chapter, picture the shift that happens when someone realizes they cannot bend you, they cannot guilt you, they cannot provoke you. So they retreat to the shadows, where whispers are sharper than knives. They twist your words. They invent stories. They plant seeds in the ears of others, hoping to erode you from the outside in. This is one of the lowest tactics of all, because it does not confront, it corrodes. Now imagine walking into a room. You feel eyes glance, then turn away too quickly. You hear laughter that doesn't include you. You sense an invisible fog hanging in the air, a story being told where your voice was never present. That's how lies work. They don't strike head-on. They creep quietly, like smoke under a door, filling every corner before you've noticed the fire. And in that moment, you feel the temptation rise. I must defend myself. I must set the record straight. But here is where many fall, because the more you fight the smoke, the more it spreads. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are unaffected by what is said, you have already won. That is not indifference, that is victory." Because lies are not about truth. They are about control. The weak do not lean on facts. They lean on gossip, exaggeration, and deception. They want to push you into panic, to force you into frantic defense. They know the moment you react, you enter their game. Lies are like mud. Fling it back and you're stained. Let it dry, brush it off, and you walk away clean. Lies work the same way. They thrive on your struggle against them, but without your energy, without your breath, they crumble under their own weight. I learned this lesson painfully once. Someone I trusted began to spread stories behind my back. At first, I burned with the need to confront, to explain, to march from person to person with proof of my innocence. I imagined debates, confrontations, fiery rebuttals, but then I saw the trap. Every word I spoke in defense only lent their lies more life, so I stopped. Instead of chasing shadows, I let my actions shine in daylight. I kept walking, I stayed true, and slowly, the contrast became too sharp to ignore. The lie could not stand beside reality. People began to see through it without my help, and in the end, the one who spread it was exposed, not by my defense, but by their own collapse. This is the paradox of truth. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It doesn't need an army to protect it. Truth stands. Lies stumble. And the longer the game plays out, the more obvious the difference becomes. So how do you deal with those who spread lies? First, refuse to engage. The moment you argue, you validate their story with your attention. Second, let your character speak. Your history, your actions, your consistency, these are louder than any rumor. And third, remember this: lies reveal more about the liar than about you. Their choice to deceive is their confession of weakness. Seneca reminded us, time discovers truth. The flywheel of character turns slowly, but it turns inevitably. A lie may run fast, but it cannot run forever. In the end, it collapses under its own weight. And when it does, the silence of those who once believed it will be louder than any cheer. Picture a courtroom without walls, where time is the only judge. Lies may testify first, with passion and noise, but truth takes the stand last, quiet and unhurried. And when it speaks, the verdict is undeniable. That is the court you must trust. At the end of the day, false words carry no real weight unless you choose to carry them. Let them fall, let them dry, brush them off with dignity, because those who rely on deception always reveal themselves in the end. And here is where the story deepens. If lies cannot break you, if your silence denies them oxygen, then the next tactic emerges. They no longer pretend to attack your reputation. They pretend to be the victim, and that stage demands its own discipline. Advancing to the third chapter, imagine a stage lit with bright lights. A person walks to the center, trembling, voice soft, eyes moist. They bow their head as if the world has wronged them, and then, slowly, they turn the script. They paint themselves as the innocent soul, the one wounded, the one misunderstood. But look closer. Beneath the fragile posture lies something deliberate. This is not helplessness. It is performance. Here's where it cuts deep. When someone realizes they cannot control you directly, they often don't come at you with fists. They come with theater. They rewrite the narrative. They put you in the role of villain while they soak in the sympathy. The crowd claps for their suffering, blind to the fact that they are watching fiction. Now imagine being caught in that performance. You confront them for crossing your boundary, and suddenly they stagger back with shock. They gasp, they twist the facts, and within moments, you look like the aggressor. Your frustration fuels their act. Your defense becomes their proof. And the more you try to explain yourself, the deeper you sink into their play. It's maddening, because the harder you fight, the guiltier you appear. The Stoics would nod knowingly here. Epictetus once said, "A wise man does not allow others to dictate his emotions." This is the key. Emotional control. Because playing the victim is not about justice, it is about avoiding accountability. Their weapon is not truth, but reaction. They need you to rage, to defend, to prove. Without your response, the act falters. Without your energy, the curtain falls. I remember facing this myself. There was someone who wore this mask every time the truth pressed against them. They broke promises, they crossed lines, and each time I held them accountable, they widened their eyes, tilted their head, and told others, "He's attacking me." Suddenly, I was the villain in their story. At first, I wanted to fight back, to tell everyone my side, to prove them wrong, but then I saw the trap. My explanations only lengthened the act. My defense became the script they wanted, so I stopped. I chose silence. I chose consistency. Instead of arguing, I let my life speak. Instead of defending, I carried on with clarity. And over time, something shifted. People began to notice the pattern. They saw that I was not the monster in the play. They saw that the one crying victim was the one spinning lies. It took time, yes. But truth has patience that falsehood cannot endure. And in the end, their act collapsed under its own weight. Here lies the deeper lesson. People who fake victimhood rely on an audience. They need a crowd to validate their story. But an audience grows restless when the script repeats too many times. Eventually, the curtain is pulled back, and the truth stands bare. What seemed convincing becomes pitiful. What once stirred sympathy becomes transparent. So how do you handle people like this? First, don't engage. Every argument you give is another line in their play. Refuse to step on stage. Second, let their actions expose them. You don't need to reveal the cracks. They reveal themselves. The more they lie, the heavier the mask becomes until it slips. Third, protect your energy. Stop wasting breath on people committed to deceit. Your strength lies not in proving innocence, but in refusing to participate in the drama. Seneca reminded us, associate only with those who improve you and avoid those who corrupt you. The one who always plays the victim does not improve you. They drain you. They confuse you. They pull you into endless performance. Walk away. Guard your soul. Because every moment you spend explaining yourself to the wrong audience is a moment stolen from the life you were meant to live. Think of it like struggling in a cracked mirror. The harder you press to fix the reflection, the more it splinters. But if you remain calm, still, steady, you find a way to rise out. Their victimhood is the quicksand. Your reaction feeds it. Your calm starves it. At the end of the day, manipulators who play the victim win only if you join their stage. The wisest response is not outrage, it is stillness, not defense, but clarity. The truth does not need rescue, it surfaces on its own. So let them cry their lines, let them clutch their chest and point their finger. Let the audience grow weary, because sooner or later the curtain falls. And when it does, the play ends, but your character endures. From here the story darkens further. If playing the victim cannot bind you, some will attempt a colder strike. They will try to cut you away from others, to leave you isolated and alone. And that tactic, too, must be faced with stoic strength. Entering the fourth chapter, feel the chill of being slowly cut away from the circle you once trusted. It doesn't come as a sudden blow. It drips like poison, drop by drop. A whisper here, a doubt there, a twisting of your words when you are not in the room. And before long, the ground beneath your friendships feels shaky, as though you are standing alone on an island you did not choose. Now imagine this scene in the wild. A pack of wolves circles its prey. They do not strike immediately. They wait. They drive the animal away from the herd, separating it, weakening it. Only then do they attack. Manipulators work in the same way. They know they cannot reach you when you are surrounded by loyalty, so they labor in the shadows, carving gaps between you and the people who hold you up. Their aim is simple: to make you question who you can trust, to make you doubt your worth, and finally, to make you lean on them, the very ones who laid the trap. Here's the truth. Isolation is not the tool of the strong, it is the weapon of the weak. Those who thrive on control cannot endure the sight of independence, so they try to fracture the bonds that give you strength. They spread rumors, stir conflict, and cloak their intentions with false concern. But what they truly fear is your freedom, the power you have when you stand rooted, surrounded by those who believe in you. Seneca once offered a line of armor for times like these. Associate only with those who improve you. Avoid those who would pull you down. That single sentence carries centuries of survival. The Stoic understood that the company you keep determines whether you walk upright or fall to the whispers of the crowd. When you build your life among people of character, lies lose their grip. Those who matter see through the fog, and those who turn against you so easily, they were never anchored to you at all. I remember walking this path myself. At first, it was subtle. A comment slipped into conversation. Are you sure you can trust him? Then came the exaggerations, the distortions of things I had said. I burned with the urge to confront it head-on, to shout the truth into every ear. But then I saw the trap. The more I fought back, the more I gave them what they wanted, my energy, my focus, my fire. So I stopped feeding the shadows. I turned to the people who truly knew me. I poured myself into those connections, stayed consistent in my actions, and let my character speak louder than my defense. In time, the storm broke. Those who mattered remained. Those who believed the lies drifted away. And when I looked back, I realized something freeing. They were never my people to begin with. This is the practice of strength. When others try to isolate you, resist the instinct to chase. Let go of those who turn away at the first whisper. Do not beg for their return. If loyalty can be undone by gossip, it was never loyalty, it was convenience. Instead, nurture the relationships that prove themselves in the storm. Guard your energy. Pour your presence into those who lift you, not those who divide you. The Stoics teach us that real power is not in clinging to everyone, but in standing with the few who are true. When you see through the strategy of isolation, you strip it of its sting. They cannot cut what is unshaken. They cannot break what has already chosen to stand. So when you feel the chill of separation, when the whispers grow louder and the circle grows thin, do not panic. Breathe, stay rooted. Remember, real relationships do not collapse because of someone else's lies. They endure, and endurance is the only proof you need. From here, the game shifts once again. If they cannot divide you from others, they will try something more subtle. They will not strike at your circle. They will strike at your confidence. And that battle is fought in the quiet of your own mind. From here, the battlefield shifts inward. No loud attack, no obvious strike, just a quiet whisper, a raised eyebrow, a question that unsettles your certainty. They don't need to push you hard. All they need is a seed of doubt planted in your mind. And if you water it with overthinking, it grows into chains you never noticed until you stopped moving. Now imagine walking across a bridge you know is solid. You've crossed it 100 times. The wood is strong, the ropes tight. But then, someone stands at the edge and says, "Are you sure that bridge will hold? What if it snaps?" Their words hang in the air. The bridge hasn't changed, but suddenly your steps feel heavier, your hands grip tighter, not because the bridge is weak, but because doubt has been introduced. That is how manipulators work. They don't break your strength, they make you question it. Here's the Stoic truth. Your worth, your decisions, your confidence, none of it belongs to another's approval. Epictetus said it clearly. A person's worth is not determined by external approval, yet this is the subtle trap. They disguise their doubt as advice. They mask their undermining as concern. And if you fall for it, you begin to look to them for reassurance, as though their voice has more authority than your own reason. That's how control sneaks back in, not through force, but through hesitation. I lived this lesson. For a season, someone in my circle questioned everything I did. If I made a choice, they tilted their head. If I shared a plan, they frowned. Are you sure? That seems risky. At first, I defended myself. I explained in detail. I built long justifications, hoping they would finally see the logic. But I missed the point. It was never about logic. They weren't questioning because they knew better. They questioned because they knew doubt was contagious. And then one day, I stopped. I felt the moment rise again, the raised brow, the tone of skepticism. But instead of explaining, I took a breath and answered with 3 simple words. Yes, I'm sure. Nothing more. No debate, no proof, just a firm statement. And the air changed. The silence after those words was louder than any argument I could have made, because confidence does not argue. It stands. That is the weapon the Stoics hand us. Not arrogance, not stubbornness, but quiet conviction. True confidence doesn't beg for agreement. It doesn't tremble under someone else's raised brow. It simply lives by reason, by clarity, by self-trust. And when you stand in that place, manipulators find nothing to grip. So how do you deal with this subtle attack? First, trust yourself. If you've chosen with thought, with experience, with reason, do not let another's doubt steal your ground. Second, stop over-explaining. Every extra word is a thread they can pull. Keep your answers clean, like a blade. Third, remember, doubt is their tool, not your truth. The fact that someone questions you does not mean you are wrong. At the end of the day, your confidence is your power. People will test it. They will poke at it, waiting for cracks. But cracks only appear if you allow them. Stand firm. Trust yourself. Say less, but mean more. Because when you master your own certainty, their whispers fall empty. And nothing is more unsettling to those who want control than a person who no longer asks for permission to be sure. From here, the attacks grow louder. When subtle doubt fails, they turn to raw provocation. They will try to light your emotions on fire, and that is where your calm becomes your sharpest blade. At this stage, the attacks no longer wear disguises. They come raw, designed not to persuade your mind, but to rattle your heart. When someone cannot control you through logic, when manipulation fails, they reach for the oldest weapon of all, your emotions. They prod, they mock, they twist your words into barbs, not because they seek truth, but because they crave the moment you lose control. Now, picture a flame, small, steady, contained. Then imagine a gust of wind rushing against it. If the fire leaps high, the wind laughs, feeding on its fury. But if the fire stays low, calm and unmoved, the wind has nothing to claim. That is what provocation is. The wind testing whether you will burn yourself out for their amusement. And here's the harsh reality. They don't want a conversation. They want a show. They want you to explode so they can step back with clean hands and say, "See, I told you they were irrational." In one swift turn, you become the villain, and they walk away cloaked in false innocence. The Stoics knew this danger well. Marcus Aurelius, faced with enemies and critics every day of his reign, wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That is the essence here. They expect your anger, your eruption, your fire. But when you refuse to mirror them, when you hold still like a mountain in the storm, you rob them of everything. They are left with empty hands. I remember being tested this way. Someone hurled insults sharp enough to cut. They dragged up old mistakes, exaggerated stories, baiting me to lash back. I felt it, the heat rising, the chest tightening, the urge to fire words like arrows. But then I chose stillness. I looked them in the eye, offered only 2 words. Interesting perspective. No defense, no explanation, just calm. The silence that followed was louder than any argument. They froze, caught off guard. The fight they wanted dissolved before it began. And in that moment, I realized something that shifted me forever. Calm isn't weakness. Calm is dominance. Calm is power. So how do you meet these moments? First, recognize the game. Ask yourself, is this person seeking truth or just a reaction? Second, claim the pause. When you feel the heat rising, breathe before you speak. Even a single heartbeat of stillness can break the chain. Third, walk away from battles not worth your time. Not every insult deserves an answer. Not every push deserves resistance. Some fights are won simply by refusing to enter the ring. Your emotions are yours. They are not toys for someone else's entertainment. The more you let them be tugged like strings, the more you hand over your strength. But the more you master them, the freer you become. That is why calm is the ultimate weapon, because in the end, the strongest person in the room is not the one who shouts the loudest. It is the one who cannot be moved. So when someone tries to bait you, remember the fire and the wind. Let them blow, let them waste their breath. Hold your ground and let their efforts burn out into nothing, because true control belongs to the one who does not need to react. If this message resonates with you, let me know in the comments with 2 words: stay calm. And if you want more reminders like this, subscribe now so these lessons remain close when you need them most. From here, the game takes on a stranger form. When they cannot shake your calm, some will try to steal something else entirely. They will imitate you, and that too carries a lesson worth seeing clearly. Entering the 7th chapter. Now imagine walking with an echo that repeats every word you say, familiar at first, but empty the longer it goes on. At first, it seems harmless, familiar, almost comforting, but then you notice the pattern stretching further. You take a step forward, it steps forward. You pivot left, it pivots left. And suddenly you realize this isn't coincidence. It's imitation, not competition, not growth. A hollow reflection chasing your light. Now imagine that reflection dressed as another person. You share an idea, and hours later it leaves their lips as if it were born from their mind. You take a risk, and suddenly they are taking the same one, only with less conviction. At first, you laugh it off. Maybe it's synchronicity. Maybe they're inspired. But the more it repeats, the more you see it clearly. They are not building a path. They are borrowing yours, piece by piece, as if by copying you they might steal your momentum. Here's the truth the Stoics would cut down to its root. If they cannot defeat you, some will attempt to become you. Seneca once said, "Character, not imitation, defines a person." And that is the dividing line. They can mimic your habits, echo your words, even dress themselves in the fragments of your style, but they can never step into your essence. They cannot copy your scars. They cannot steal the weight of your experience. They cannot replicate the fire that forged you. I recall a time when this struck close. Someone in my orbit began tracing every step I took. If I read a new author, suddenly they were quoting the same lines. If I shifted my focus, they followed suit, pretending it had been their direction all along. At first, I felt anger, like my labor was being siphoned into another body. It felt as if my originality was being stolen in plain sight. But then, clarity arrived. The more they copied, the clearer it became. They were only shadows. And shadows have no weight. One day, I changed everything. A new method, a new approach, a path they hadn't anticipated. And in that moment, they froze. Because without me, they had no script. That was the day I learned something I never forgot. Imitation is not flattery. It is proof you are ahead. Proof that you've stepped into a light so strong it draws the shadows forward, grasping for something they can never truly hold. The Stoics remind us not to waste our energy on what we cannot control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not external things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And so I judged imitation differently. Instead of theft, I saw it as a mirror of my progress. Instead of feeling robbed, I felt confirmed. Because the fact that they were copying meant they were already behind, and that is where they would remain." So what do you do when faced with the imitator? First, stop feeding them your focus. Attention is oxygen, and without it, they choke on their own emptiness. Second, keep evolving. The faster you move, the more paths you carve, the harder it becomes for them to keep up. While they chase your footprints, you are already miles ahead, cutting new trails. Third, remember this. They copy because they fear themselves. They have not found the courage to live from their own center, so they orbit yours. That is not your burden. That is their prison. Think of the sun and its shadow. The shadow stretches, shrinks, bends, but only in reaction to the source of light. It never generates its own glow. It never warms the earth. It never nourishes life. The shadow is tethered to the sun, dependent on it. But the sun? The sun rises and sets regardless. It does not notice the shadow. It does not adjust for it. It simply burns. And because it burns, everything else responds. Be the sun. Let the shadows trip over themselves trying to keep up. I've seen people waste years obsessing over imitators, feeling robbed of credit or originality. But the truth is simple. Copies fade, originals endure. History remembers the source, not the echo. The world honors the authentic, not the mimic. And even if the copycat enjoys brief attention, it dissolves when the time comes for true creativity, for genuine substance. Because when challenges sharpen, only the authentic mind can respond. A copy has nothing to draw from but emptiness. So stand firm, keep walking, let them follow, stumble, repeat. Do not slow your pace to watch them. Do not waste your fire resenting them. Keep your eyes forward, because your task is not to stop the shadow. It is to keep shining in such a way that the difference between real and imitation is undeniable. At the end of the day, imitation is not your enemy. It is the proof of your lead. The more they copy, the clearer it becomes that they cannot stand on their own. And the more you evolve, the further ahead you rise, leaving their reflection stretched thin, fading at the edges, until finally it disappears at sunset. From here, the mask shifts once more. When imitation fails, when copying cannot close the gap, some will retreat into quiet smiles, pretending to clap for your success. But their true hope is not to see you soar, it is to see you stumble. And that, too, carries its own lesson. Let's step into the 8th chapter, where the mask becomes subtle and the smiles are the most deceptive of all. Picture someone standing in the crowd as you speak of your dreams. They nod politely. They clap at the right time. They even say, "I'm happy for you." But behind the smile, there is no belief in your rise. There is only anticipation of your fall. They don't applaud because they see your strength. They applaud because they want front row seats to your stumble. Here's where the knife twists. Your success threatens them. It shines a mirror on their stagnation. It reminds them of what they could have been, but chose not to become. And when faced with the reflection of their own unfulfilled life, they find comfort in imagining your collapse. If they cannot surpass you, they'd rather see you sink. Your growth exposes their lack of it, and rather than build themselves, they wait for you to break. Think of it like a storm battering against a tree. The wind howls, branches whip, the trunk groans. The storm believes it can force the tree to the ground, and a weak tree may bend, snap, or fall. But a tree with deep roots, it stands. No matter how violent the storm, it holds. Those waiting for your failure are like that storm, loud, relentless, pressing, but in truth, powerless unless you let their force uproot you. The Stoics prepared for this reality. Epictetus taught, "Do not waste energy on those who hope for your downfall." Your focus should be on growth, not on proving people wrong. It is a profound shift in perspective, because the temptation is always there, to answer the doubters, to prove yourself, to use their disbelief as fuel. But fuel borrowed from resentment burns dirty. Growth is cleaner, growth is steadier, growth is yours. I've lived this moment myself. There was someone in my life who disguised doubt with politeness. Every time I spoke of my goals, they smiled and said, "That's ambitious." Every time I took a step, they added, "Be careful, it won't be easy." And when setbacks came, as they always do, their response was swift. "See, I told you this wasn't simple." In that instant, clarity pierced me. They were not supporting me. They were waiting for the crack, the stumble, the failure they could point to and say, "I knew it." Their encouragement was a costume. Their true desire was my collapse. At first, I wasted time explaining myself. I rehearsed my progress for them like evidence in a courtroom. I sought validation from someone who secretly wished against me. It drained me. Until one day, I stopped. I no longer explained. I no longer sought their approval. I returned to the work itself, to my path, to my growth. And when the success finally came, I looked around and noticed their silence. The very people who had smiled at my expected fall could not bring themselves to clap at my rise, and that silence was louder than any cheer. Here lies the deeper Stoic insight. Success built on proving others wrong is fragile. Success built on inner growth is unshakable. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to act according to nature, not according to applause, because applause is fickle. Applause today can be whispers tomorrow. But the roots of discipline, integrity, and persistence, those do not sway with the crowd. So what do you do with people who wait for your failure? First, recognize them. The faint smile, the disguised doubt, the silence when you rise, these are not hard to see once your eyes are trained. Second, stop wasting breath on them. You do not need to announce your every step, to hand them the script they crave. Third, keep growing. Focus your energy on what feeds your roots. Let your results speak in a language doubters cannot counterfeit. Because here's the truth. Their waiting is not your burden. Their anticipation does not dictate your journey. They wait as spectators, but you walk as the player. They sit in shadows, but you move in light. Their patience for your fall will turn into their exhaustion as you continue to stand. And each step you take forward is a reminder that they have wasted their time. Think of them as watchers at the edge of a cliff. They gather, expecting the climber to fall. They point, they whisper, they smile with anticipation. But as the climber keeps ascending higher and higher, their whispers grow thin, their smiles fade, and eventually they disappear. Because there is nothing left for them to see except a truth they cannot deny: you did not fall. At the end of the day, some people wait for your failure as if it were entertainment. Do not give them the show. Do not dance for their expectations. Do not hand them the satisfaction of watching you stumble. Rise anyway. Succeed anyway, because nothing unsettles those who doubt you more than the sight of your unbroken strength. From here, the circle closes. The imitators fade, the storms quiet, and the doubters lose their seats. What remains is not their games, but the ground beneath your feet, the mastery of self, and that mastery is the threshold. Part A was their tactics, Part B is your response. This is where the script no longer belongs to them. This is where it belongs to you. As we step into this new chapter, imagine the battlefield shifting from the noise outside to the silence within. The enemy no longer comes with insults or lies. It comes with speed, with urgency, with the demand that you answer now, decide now, react now, and in that rush, power slips from your hands to theirs. Picture a man confronted in the marketplace. Voices rise around him, questions fly, accusations swirl. All eyes wait for his reply. He feels the heat on his skin, the pulse quickening in his chest. The trap is not in the words themselves. It is in the demand for immediacy. To blurt out something, anything, before clarity has had a chance to arrive. That is how control is stolen, not by force, but by haste. Here's the insight. Mastery often looks like delay. A pause, a window of stillness between stimulus and response, a breath that says, "I am not yours to command." Epictetus reminded us that we cannot control external events, only our responses to them. And what is a response if not the child of a pause? Without the pause, we react. With the pause, we decide. I remember a time I failed this test. A colleague cornered me with sudden accusations, their words sharp, their tone triumphant. I snapped back too quickly, eager to defend. In that rush, I said things clumsy, things twisted, things that gave them more ammunition than they had before. They walked away smiling, not because they were right, but because I had surrendered control. That night, shame burned hotter than their words, and I swore never again. The next time came weeks later. Another provocation, another attempt to trap me in immediacy. But this time, I caught myself. I breathed. I let silence hang like a curtain. Seconds stretched, eyes watched, but I did not rush. I said calmly, "I'll think on that and respond tomorrow." The look on their face told me everything. They had lost. Not the argument. There wasn't one yet. They lost the frame. They no longer dictated the rhythm, and in that silence I had reclaimed myself. This is the essence of the non-reaction window. Not passivity, but deliberate delay. It is armor made of time. It is strategy woven into stillness. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." The window is where you revoke it, where you reclaim that power. Think of it like a swordsman in a duel. The untrained fighter swings wildly at every feint, exhausting himself. The master waits. He watches. He lets the opponent commit, expose, overreach, and only then does he move. The pause is not weakness. It is the foundation of strength. So, how do you live this? First, install delay in the small things. When a message stings, don't reply immediately. Write, but don't send. When asked for a decision under pressure, practice the simple phrase, "I'll let you know tomorrow." When anger rises in conversation, take one breath longer than feels comfortable. These are small drills, but they build a reflex of sovereignty. Because here is the truth. Most manipulation depends on urgency. They need you flustered, cornered, breathless. They need you to act before you see the trap. But once you build the non-reaction window, the trap collapses. Their pressure turns inward. Their urgency exposes them, and you stand steady, unhurried, untouchable. I have seen entire conflicts dissolve in a single pause. What looked like a raging fire cooled to embers when one person simply refused to feed it. I have seen lies lose their grip because no answer was given in haste. Time itself became the ally, and in that ally, freedom was found. At the end of the day, the pause is more than a tactic. It is a way of living, a refusal to let the world dictate your tempo. A declaration that your mind is not for sale, your emotions not at the mercy of others. The non-reaction window is the gap where dignity breathes, where wisdom gathers, where power waits and then acts, not in panic, but in clarity. So when the pressure mounts, when the demand for immediacy tightens like a noose, remember this: delay is not defeat. Silence is not surrender. The pause is your proof that you belong to yourself, and from here, the path leads deeper. Because the pause alone is not enough, you must also know what you stand on when the silence ends. That is where your personal code begins. Moving into the second part of this journey, imagine the silence after the storm. You've learned to pause, to resist the bait, to let time become your shield. But silence alone is not enough. A pause without principle can become hesitation. What carries you forward when the silence ends is your code. Without it, you are always reacting to others. With it, you are anchored, unshakable, clear. Now imagine walking into a room where people are waiting to test you, some with open eyes, some with hidden agendas. If you don't know who you are, you'll bend to whoever pushes hardest. But if you've written your own law, etched it into your bones, then their pressure becomes nothing but wind against stone. Your code decides before you speak. Your code stands where emotions once wavered. The Stoics knew this power. Marcus Aurelius lived as emperor, surrounded by flatterers and enemies alike. Yet in his meditations he wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple, sharp, final. That was his code. And because he returned to it every day, he remained himself even when the world demanded otherwise. Epictetus too reminded his students, "Do not ask what others will allow, but what you will allow yourself." That is freedom. That is dignity. I remember a season when I lacked such clarity. I wanted to please everyone, to stay in every circle, to offend no one. And because I had no code, I was pulled in every direction. One friend said, "Stay late and help me." Another asked, "Can you cover for me again?" I said yes to all, and in saying yes to them, I said no to myself. Burnout crept in. Resentment followed. Until one night, staring at the ceiling, I asked the question the Stoics always pressed. What do I truly stand on? What do I refuse to bend? So I wrote. I wrote a code. Small sentences at first. My time has value. Respect is not negotiable. I will not lie to make others comfortable. These were not lofty ideals for the world. They were boundaries for me. The next week, someone tried to push again. "Can you stay late? It won't take long." My old self would have folded, but the code was there, quiet but sharp. I said, "No, I have other commitments." And I walked away lighter, not because they respected me, but because I respected myself. This is the essence of living by a code. It spares you from endless explanations. It shields you from manipulation. It clarifies decisions before the moment arrives. Without a code, every situation is a storm. With a code, every storm meets a wall. Think of a ship without a compass. Every wave, every gust of wind, every voice from the deck shifts its direction. But a ship with a compass does not argue with the sea. It knows where it is going. It endures every storm with clarity. Your code is your compass. Without it, you drift. With it, you command the course. So how do you build this? Begin small. Define 3 principles you will not compromise. Guard your time. Guard your dignity. Guard your truth. Write them down. Speak them aloud. Repeat them until they live in your bones. Then let them guide you in small choices. Decline what violates them. Embrace what honors them. Over time, the code becomes second nature, like breath. And here's the paradox. When you live by a code, people may resist at first. Those who benefited from your softness will push back. They'll call you selfish, cold, unyielding. Let them. Because in truth, boundaries are not cruelty. They are clarity. And clarity attracts those who respect you, while driving away those who never did. At the end of the day, your freedom is not secured by silence alone. It is secured by the laws you write for yourself. The pause gives you space, but the code fills it with direction. Without it, you pause only to be swept again by others. With it, you pause, you choose, and you stand. So write your law. Engrave it in your life. And when the world presses, let your answer be simple. This is my code, because nothing bends a person who has already decided who they are. From here, we move to the next foundation of strength. It is not only about what you refuse, it is about what you build. Options, leverage, the quiet freedom that comes when no single person can ever hold you hostage again. Advancing to the third part of this journey, let's stand in front of a locked door. Behind you, someone smirks because they believe it is the only exit you have. They think the key in their hand gives them power over your future. And maybe for a moment, it feels true. But then you turn your head and notice something they missed. Windows open, other doors ajar, a hidden path leading out. Their smile fades. Because leverage only exists when you have no options. Now imagine your own life. How many times have you felt cornered because you believed you only had one way forward? One job, one relationship, one circle of friends. And because you thought it was the only door, you endured things you should have walked away from. This is where Stoic wisdom speaks sharply. Freedom is not found in clinging to one fragile branch. Freedom comes when you grow many roots. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. We often hear this as a call to endure, but it is also a call to design. If you know the world outside is uncertain, why place your entire fate in one basket? Why bet your peace on a single source of income, a single person's approval, a single fragile pillar? A Stoic does not wait for collapse. They build options before the storm arrives. I recall a man I once knew who poured everything into one path, one job that promised stability. He endured disrespect, swallowed injustice because he believed leaving meant losing everything. And when that job ended, he collapsed. Not because he lacked talent, but because he had tied his entire worth to one fragile thread. Compare that to another friend who never stopped learning. While working one job, he built skills on the side. While leaning on one circle, he nurtured others quietly. When his employer tried to corner him, he walked away with grace. Why? Because he had built leverage. He had options. This is what I call asymmetric strength. The ability to walk away at any moment, not because you want to, but because you can, and in that ability lies quiet power. Seneca wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." And I would add, true wealth also lies in never being held hostage by one option. A person with many paths cannot be trapped. So how do you build this? Begin small. Learn one new skill outside your main work, something that opens another door. Create one stream of income, however humble, that proves you're not chained to a single source. Broaden your network, not with shallow connections, but with genuine bonds in different circles. Each step is another window unlocked, another door opened, another path carved. The effect is profound. The next time someone tries to corner you with threats or manipulation, you will not panic. Their power evaporates because you know you are not trapped. You can smile calmly, knowing that if this door closes, you still walk forward. That calm is what unsettles them most. They cannot own you when you have already freed yourself. Think of it like a tree again. A shallow-rooted tree depends on one narrow strip of soil. A drought comes, and it dies. But a tree with roots that stretch wide can draw from many sources. It does not fear the loss of one stream because it drinks from many. Build your roots wide. Then watch how quickly fear loses its grip. At the end of the day, building asymmetric options is not greed. It is dignity. It is preparation. It is living in such a way that no person, no job, no single approval can ever chain you. When you stand on many paths, you stand free. So build your options, build your leverage, and when someone believes they have you cornered, let them keep believing. Smile, turn, and walk out through another door. From here, the journey moves to something deeper. Not only freedom through options, but the way your consistency transforms even attacks into fuel. That is where the reputation flywheel begins. Entering this final chapter, picture a mill wheel standing by a quiet river. At first it takes effort to turn, slow, heavy. The water pushes, but the wheel resists. Then, with each rotation, it gathers momentum. Soon, the current alone is enough to keep it spinning with power, grinding grain into flour day and night. That is what reputation becomes when you choose to live with consistency. At first, it feels slow and unrewarded, but over time, each act compounds, and the weight of your character turns into a force that sustains itself. Now imagine the opposite. Someone hurls insults at you, another spreads lies, a third imitates you in desperation. To most, these feel like losses, attacks, things to be defended against. But for the person who has built a reputation grounded in truth, each strike becomes fuel. Every attempt to stain them highlights the contrast between rumor and reality. Every imitation proves their leadership. Every doubt sharpened against them only emphasizes their resilience. This is the paradox. Once you live with integrity long enough, attacks don't destroy you, they accelerate you. The Stoics knew this law. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." Simple words, but simplicity is what builds flywheels. One honest act is unremarkable. One kept promise is easy to overlook. One refusal to gossip may even go unnoticed. But repeated over months, years, decades, those acts compound into reputation, a fortress that needs no defense because it defends itself. I remember meeting a man whose entire life was a testament to this. He never advertised his virtues. He never sought recognition. But every time he promised, he delivered. Every time he was pressured to lie, he refused. At first, no one noticed. People mocked him for being too rigid, too quiet, too boring. Yet when storms came, when false stories spread, when others scrambled to prove their innocence, this man simply kept walking, and people began to notice, slowly at first, then all at once. His name became synonymous with trust. Even lies told about him collapsed, because they could not stick to what was already proven. His wheel had gained momentum, and no storm could slow it down. Contrast that with someone I knew who chased reputation instead of building it. They flattered when it suited them. They bent rules when it was convenient. They overpromised, underdelivered. And yes, for a time they looked impressive. They wore the costume of success. But when whispers rose against them, when doubt spread, they had no foundation to lean on. Their wheel had no weight, no water to turn it. It stopped, and so did their influence. Here's the Stoic lesson. The flywheel of reputation is not built in moments of applause. It is built in the dark, in the unseen, in the choices that seem small. Seneca said, "Character is fate, and fate is shaped by repetition." When you choose truth again and again, when you live in a way that aligns with your values, your character becomes heavy with momentum. Heavy in the best sense, so heavy that no rumor can move it off course. Think of the concept of anti-fragility, though the Stoics lived it long before the word existed. Fragile things shatter under pressure. Robust things resist pressure, but anti-fragile things grow because of it. A muscle torn in training rebuilds stronger. A tree bent by storms drives roots deeper. A character attacked by lies, if grounded in truth, becomes more respected precisely because of the attack. That is the flywheel turning under fire. So how do you build this in your own life? Start small. Deliver on your promises, even when no one is watching. Speak truth in rooms where lies are easier. Keep boundaries when pressured to betray them. And document, not by boasting, but by consistency. Let people see the pattern, not by your words, but by your life. This is not branding, it is being, and the more you repeat, the heavier your flywheel grows. I once worked alongside someone who exemplified this discipline. They were not the loudest in meetings, nor the most charismatic, but their word was steel. If they said they would finish, they finished. If they admitted a mistake, they owned it fully. At first, people overlooked them in favor of the flashier voices, but over time, when stakes grew high, who did everyone turn to? The quiet one, the steady one, the one whose wheel had been turning long before anyone cared to notice. That is the power of compounded trust. But here's the warning. A flywheel is slow to build and easy to stall. One betrayal of your own code, one compromise of integrity, one repeated lapse can cost years of momentum. People forgive mistakes, but they don't forget patterns. That's why living by your code, as we discussed earlier, is not optional, it is essential. It keeps the wheel turning, one honest choice at a time. And this is where the Stoic mindset protects you, because living for reputation alone is a trap. If you act only for others' eyes, you will bend the moment the audience changes. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, be satisfied with even the smallest step forward and consider the outcome of it. He wasn't chasing applause. He was building his wheel step by step because he knew the weight of consistent virtue is unbreakable. Imagine this in practice. You deliver your work with excellence and someone lies about you. Instead of panicking, you let your history of results defend you. You maintain calm. People see the contrast, and their respect grows. Or you refuse to join gossip, and someone mocks you as aloof. Over time, that same restraint marks you as trustworthy, the one people confide in when trust matters most. Every attack becomes fuel. Every attempt to weaken you makes your wheel spin faster. At the end of the day, this is the paradox of power. You don't gain it by chasing it. You gain it by living in such a way that it accumulates around you like gravity. You don't need to defend yourself frantically because your consistency has already done the work. And when storms rise, when whispers fly, when imitators circle, your wheel keeps turning. Their efforts crumble. Your reputation becomes not fragile, not even robust, but anti-fragile. It grows stronger under fire. So keep turning the wheel, slowly, steadily, without show, and let time itself carry the weight of your choices forward. Because in the end, the loudest response to lies, envy, and doubt is not a shout, not an argument, not even silence. It is the quiet force of a life lived so consistently that nothing can stop its momentum. And from here, the circle truly closes. We began with the tricks of those who fear your strength. We end with the truth that their tricks only fail if you master yourself. Mastery in pause, mastery in code, mastery in options, mastery in consistency. And with that mastery, the script is no longer theirs to write, it is yours. Keep moving forward with quiet determination. Every step you take toward growth unsettles those who once believed you would stumble. There is nothing more powerful than proving, not with arguments, but with your resilience, that their doubts were misplaced. Your rise is not a performance for them. It is a declaration of who you are becoming. At the end of the day, there will always be people who secretly hope to see you falter. They may not admit it aloud, but they wait for the moment when pressure bends you, when fear makes you hesitate, when exhaustion tempts you to stop. Do not hand them that moment. Do not let their silent expectations become the chains that hold you down. Strength is not loud. Strength is the steady choice to continue. Remember this: the victory is not in convincing them, but in refusing to betray yourself. Stay focused on your path. Stay steady in your decisions. Let your actions speak with a voice far louder than their whispers. Each time you choose clarity over reaction, patience over haste, and integrity over approval, you take the script from their hands and write it as your own. If this message speaks to you, share your presence with a simple comment. Stand firm. Let it be a reminder, not only to yourself, but to everyone reading, that true power is silent, steady, and yours to claim. And if you wish to walk further on this path of inner mastery, subscribe so these reminders of strength and calm are always close when you need them most. The journey of self-mastery will test you. Some days it will feel heavy. But with every test you endure, you carve out a version of yourself that cannot be shaken by doubt or broken by pressure. In the next video, we will step deeper into that journey, exploring how to remain untouchable in the face of life's storms. Your path is your own. Own it fully. And remember, you are stronger than they ever believed.